Tory, but at some point, would you consider... Est-ce que vous faites un traitement de faveur envers Uber? Est-ce que vous répondez à ça?
Maintenant, nous travaillons très fort et très vite ce que c'est possible pour réviser les régulations entre les taxicabs et Uber. Et maintenant, c'est la priorité numéro 1 pour nous de finir la tâche de changer les régulations. Et maintenant, ce n'est pas raison pour la démonstration et l'activité des taxis ce matin.
Mayor Tory,
yes?
I'm speaking to a lot of drivers today. Things are getting very tense and heated out there. Most of the drivers say what they want is for Uber to just be temporarily stopped while the city works on its new regulations. I know you're asking for calm, but a lot of drivers out there say this is push come to shove. A lot of them are behind on mortgage payments. I mean, how do you keep them calm for the next while the city works it out? I mean, some of them are threatening that they're going to do this every week potentially until something happens.
Well, I would hope they would examine whether anything was accomplished by this, aside from putting potentially public safety at risk and aside from massively disrupting the city. And I heard, as I said, the talk radio shows were full of people phoning this morning saying they've never downloaded the Uber app before, but they are now because they're angry with the cab industry. And so I would just say that to continue to do this, whether it's daily, weekly, or monthly, is totally counterproductive. I would say, with respect to the principal part of your question, that the best we can do is work as fast as we can to fix the problem for real by bringing in regulations that bring Uber into regulation for the first time and that lessen the regulatory burden on taxis. And that is what the best that we can do, I mean, in that circumstance. It's one of those things where to pretend that you're going, I don't control the decision-making of law enforcement people anyway. I can make requests of them as I have done. And we can sort of continue to have those discussions, as I will do. I can continue to ask on a daily basis without being without harassing anyone, how fast our officials can work, and they're working at breakneck speed to try and get this done properly so that we have a good regulation. Beyond that, I don't know what to say, other than to say that this kind of behavior is generally not acceptable. It certainly isn't productive. It doesn't advance our interests in one iota. To get a faster regulation, a better legal position, it just doesn't help. And in fact, it puts people at risk. And I can't accept that as the Mayor of Toronto.
I watched a man, a cab driver, hanging off an Uber driver as it was speeding down Bay Street. There is no rational thought left. There are desperate people. Are you worried that this is going to get worse before these new regs come in?
I have great faith in Torontonians, including cab drivers and Uber drivers and everybody else in this city. We know that the best way to resolve problems is not by putting ourselves or others at risk. I saw that video, and it's profoundly unacceptable that this kind of thing should go on. I saw on television an officer's bike lying at the side of the road where the officer had been knocked off his bike in some sort of a confrontation with a taxi cab. And these are just not things that go on. This is not the way we do things in our city. And so I'm confident that if people could have just a little bit of faith, they've had patience. I understand that. I understand that things always take longer than people want, including me. But in the end, we are working as hard as we can, and we are working no slower than administrations in other cities trying to grapple around the world that are trying to grapple with a very complicated issue. And we are trying to do something that a lot of them have failed to do, which is to come up with a regulatory regime that accepts the fact that you have this new disruptive technology that has changed the rules of the game, and that is going to continue to coexist whether I will it to be so or not. And at the same time, you have a cab industry of hardworking people who deserve the right to be able to earn a living. And we are trying to achieve that regulatory balance, that regulatory regime that will have a new world in front of us that allows both to be there on a fair basis and on a basis that is safe for the public. It's hard work. It's complex work. Our people are up to it. And in the meantime, I would just hope people would understand that when we say the winter, that's not that far away. I know every day counts, but we're working very hard to try and get this done.
Mayor Tory, you told the protesters to stay down.
No. No one's ever mentioned the end of the year, and as much as I do say, and it's truthful, that I ask all the time about whether we can get it done sooner as opposed to any time later, I've been told the winter, and I'm taking people at face value on that in terms of when we would likely see this regulation, and I am confident, and I can assure the public again and the cab industry, the people who are doing this work are working as fast as they can. I'll tell you this, I want to be honest about this, because you asked a question that was related to people doing whatever they could. When we've had meetings with people from the cab industry, and we've said, what could we do to help make the regulatory load lighter on you? Their answer almost uniformly has been ban Uber. And we've said, well, perhaps you don't understand. We've indicated we probably aren't going to be able to ban Uber with 300,000 users and a technology that's part of the 21st century and 15,000, 20,000 drivers. We're asking you what changes we could make to allow you to compete more effectively with them. And the answer is ban Uber. And I would hope that if they could decide, and maybe it would be a better use of time than what we've got going on here that puts public safety at risk and so on, that they'd like to come to the meetings and participate actively with us in finding ways we can lessen the regulatory burden on them, lessen some of the costs on them, and make sure we have an equitable playing field vis-a-vis Uber. That would be a good use of time that might actually help us speed up this work that we're doing. And so I would invite them to do so. Yes, Oliver?
You draw a distinction between the sorts of actions you're criticized of blocking emergency vehicles or attacking police and peaceful protest, which even if it involves blocking roads, which is that's a democratic right.
No, look, I mean, we've had a long established history here as well of people having peaceful protest. I think we've always also discussed the fact, though, that in a society that is, sort of civilized and orderly, that there does come a point in time where you've made your point and you can move on. And that's a judgment call that everybody has to make, including the people who are protesting. I would say, that blocking University Avenue, blocking the Gardiner, so that other people can't get around for more than perhaps a short time to make a point is just unnecessary. The point has been made. The point has been made. It's been made with me. I understand the level of the concern. I understand the depth of the concern, the urgency. If I could speed up the regulatory process by waving a wand or pushing a button, I would do it. But I understand completely the urgency and the very heartfelt concern that the drivers have, in particular the drivers. But I think there's a point where just reason and civility says you've made your point. You don't need to block the Gardiner or University Avenue anymore. You can stand down. And I'm actually saying that I think we've reached that point right here, right now in the city, where they could quite easily let everybody get back about their business. They could go back to trying to earn a living on the streets of Toronto, serving the traveling public as they do, and that the point has been made. They don't need to do this again this afternoon.
Mayor Tory, what if they...
This will be the last question, then I've got to get back to council.
What if they don't? What do you want to see happen?
Well, look, again, the police and other officials will decide if they think there's anything that should be done about that. I just think that would be very poor judgment on their part. I think it would be non-productive activity on their part to do this, and it would be inconsiderate of the rest of the people of Toronto and probably ultimately bad for their own business and their own reputation. But they have to make that judgment, and I'm simply making a request as Mayor of Toronto, telling them that I've got the message, we're hard at work trying to fix this, and that I would appreciate it if they would take the broader public interest into account in what they do or don't do this afternoon. Thanks a lot.